Yeah, I'd like to call this special council meeting to order for Monday, September 22nd. Tonight is our roundtable meeting. We have a couple council members attending shortly, Councillor Jason Mady and Councillor McGuire Blaze. We acknowledge that this land is the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of First Nations, comprised of the Ojibwe, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi peoples, and of the Huron-Wendat peoples. We value the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and of all the original peoples of Turtle Island who have been living and working on the land from time immemorial. Any declarations of conflicts of interest, members of council this evening? Seeing none, if you find yourself in conflict, please let us know later. Needing a mover and a seconder of the adoption of the special council meeting for today, Monday, September 22nd. Moved by Deputy Mayor Shepley and supported by Councillor Allard. Any questions about the agenda? Seeing none, all in favor, and that is carried unanimously. We need a mover and a seconder to move into the committee of the whole, and that CAO Kate Drusevich be appointed as the presiding officer of the committee of the whole, and that the presiding officer as appointed shall have the discretion and authority to modify, relax, amend any of the procedure bylaws currently governing council proceedings, except as may otherwise herein by council, and that upon the completion of the committee of the whole, the special council meeting shall reconvene, and the presiding officer of the committee of the whole shall then rise and report to council any recommendations to council that were made by resolution of the committee of the whole. And further, that council now move into the committee of the whole for a period not to exceed 6 o'clock as to consider items identified in the committee of the whole agenda dated September 22nd, attached therein Schedule A. Needing a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Guerin, Councillor Hammond, any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried unanimously.
So we'll call the meeting to order at 4:02. I will again ask if there's any declarations of conflicts of interest on the topics tonight. Okay, bearing none, I will seek a mover and a seconder for adoption of the published agenda for the committee of the whole roundtable. Okay, moved by Councillor Hammond, seconded by Councillor Guerin. Any questions? Okay, all in favor? And that carries. Okay, so the next item is to move into the committee of the whole items for discussion. And so as with previous committee of the whole meetings, each agenda item tonight will be discussed for up to 15 minutes, and we'll have Cassandra have a timer for each topic. And for each item, the councillor who introduced the topic, we ask that you provide a brief summary, followed by any additional information that administration may want to add. Please note that tonight's discussions are for deliberation purposes only. Should council determine that further action is necessary, that item should be brought forward at a regular council meeting for further consideration. So with that, the first item on tonight's agenda is town AED units, and this was introduced by Councillor Verbeek. So Councillor Verbeek, could you please provide a brief summary of the topic for discussion?
Sure, and thank you through the chair. Just a brief update, mostly for fellow councillors, how this came about was Dave Thibodeau, I believe I'm saying his name right, from Windsor EMS. I was able to meet with him and see the new units that are being provided to all the municipalities, these new outdoor cases. And during that meeting, he spoke a little bit about some of the AEDs across Ontario are actually running into some issues with their battery packs and their pads not being able to be replaced because the manufacturer isn't making them anymore. So at that point, I got concerned. I sent an email to Jake and our Director Morris and Director Malandrucolo to ask if we could get some kind of update or audit on all of the units that we have across our municipality, and if we have any that are in danger of, that are from this manufacturer, that we, when their components expire, if we may run into a problem having to replace them, and then we would have to replace the whole unit, which is could become a pretty big ticket item. So it's something I thought we should just get ahead of, so we would know if we're going to get dinged with 40 new units in 2026 in advance of this. And so if there was some kind of audit in a couple of email exchanges, I've learned that administration, as always, is getting ahead of this and already working on it for us, so that I just wanted to have the discussion, because now we know that this is coming up, and it's a good idea to know what we're looking at, right? If we have 300 units that we're not going to be able to replace their battery pack and they all expire January 26th, it's good to know that that's coming up the pike. If it's just something small that we can phase in, I just want to know if we could get that information pre-budget. And my understanding is that administration's already on it. So any comments from Director Morissette, who's been working on this?
I'll actually pass it over to our manager of HR, Brandy Sieben. So she oversees the program, and we could get her to give us a brief update.
So the town does have 15 AED units that are inspected monthly, and biannually, we actually have a third party that comes to make sure that any preventative maintenance are done. They check and replace batteries, any of the pads, make sure that they're tested so that they're in working order. That most recent inspection did happen in October of 2024, so it won't be scheduled again until 2026. In addition to that, we do have 4 additional units through Essex Fire and Rescue. Many of those original AED units were acquired through funding through Ontario Defibrillator Access Initiative between the years of 2011 and 2013, which did supply units to publicly funded sports and recreation facilities. The town has been advised that 11 of our units are units specifically called the CR Pluses that will no longer have replacement parts available for purchase. And so of those 11 units that will need to be replaced, there are 2 that in 2026 will have batteries and all electrodes expire. So in 2026, we know that there's 2, with all of the remaining 9 units expiring in 2027. In terms of, using the legislation that we have, which is with 2020, came out in 2020, administration is currently reviewing what our legal requirements are in terms of, locations and best practices to determine the appropriate locations for all of our AED units and public facilities. The units that are set to expire in 2026 will have units ordered in 2025 through our operating budget. Additional costs that may be required for replacements in 2026 will be presented in the 2026 budget for council consideration.
So glad we're having this discussion. Thank you, Brandy, because I'm coming down a couple levels. When we had this meeting, I'm going to assume now that the site that identifies all of the AEDs in our municipality, I'm going to say there's a great number of them that are not town, because the number you're giving me is nothing like what we were seeing on the site, right? Where you locate the AEDs. I presume though, by just, without investigating further, which is why I wanted to have this conversation, that those were all town units. So maybe at some point we take it upon ourselves, or they will, to let the public know that you should also be auditing these, because you may not be able to get replacement parts.
I think what you were probably looking at or referring to is the registry. So that was a requirement, again, under the Defibrillation Registration and Public Access Act. And so that would include every publicly available, which are not all town-owned. Yeah.
We have a question from Councillor Hammond.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair. Is there, are these devices required a third-party inspection periodically, or is it just you buy one and you look after it?
So through the chair, it's not required to have a third-party maintenance. You are required to have somebody who is skilled in order to use it. We make sure that because they are public, and in public places, we do make sure that we do our due diligence by making sure that we do have them inspected, cleaned, and tested every other year.
Yeah, it seems, it would make more sense to me that, something, like these devices would get inspected the same as, your fire prevention would. You know, it just, I don't see why someone would go and invest in a piece of equipment, learn how to use it, and then not have to get a regular inspection to make sure that that device is working properly. Just hope that it will.
Question from Mayor Bondi?
I think the AEDs do get checked every so often, not by a third party, but they're not really that complicated. They're pretty basic machines. So my question is, I think the county was talking about a grant that they got in how we can look at an outdoor box. And I also got approached from the Clifford family in Harrow who would like to donate the cost of an outdoor box and an AED, but they would like it to be located at the Harrow Police Station. So wondering if we can start to talk about the outdoor boxes.
Through the chair. So we did get an update from the OPP. We did reach out to them to make sure that they were okay with having that on the property, because with security issues, we want to make sure that they're not going to have people there that shouldn't be. So the OPP did say that they are okay with an outdoor unit being put on their building, our building, but the building that they use. So we're good on that one. And then we are working with EMS right now on locations for adding that one that they're looking to donate. So one of the areas that we've come up with from administration is at the Colchester Harbor. Reason being is it's far from one of the further locations from an ambulance base in the municipality. As well, we have people on boats 24 hours a day. We have it's a good location to have it because of the remoteness of it. So that's one of the suggestions that we have. So we're working with EMS on that. And then we are also looking at the option of an outdoor box at the Coam Park. So we're getting Coam Park board some information about that. So we should have coming on the radar probably 3 for sure that we'd be looking at. So there's a lot of extra things that we need to look at, like the communication portion of it and what goes in with those devices. So we are looking at all of that right now. There may be a little bit of an expense to us to make sure that the devices are monitored. So we're getting all those costs to see how that's.
Is any other questions from members of council? Councillor Hammond?
Statement. I find it kind of fishy that these initial companies that distribute all these devices are all of a sudden conveniently no longer in business as the renewals come up. It kind of rubs me the wrong.
So in summary, we did meet internally and we do have a replacement program in mind. And so that'll be coming through either operations this year or within future coming budget years. And we understand the importance of having available AED units in our facilities. So we're working with HR and closely with facilities to make sure that we're meeting legislative requirements, if not exceeding them. And just a point of clarification, we do have a third party that is inspecting the units on a regular rotation. Okay, so with that, I will move on to the next topic, which was from Councillor Allard. Councillor Allard, if you could give us a brief description on Colchester lights and fish flies.
Chair, everybody knows that Colchester gets embedded with fish flies in June. And recently the Grove Motel had taken their lights from the white usual light they have to an orange light, which I believe had either repelled the fish flies or whatever they do, but they didn't have as many fish flies as they had years before. Down at the harbor where we have fish flies, the kids have to scoop up with shovels. It's so bad down there. I thought the lights, if we could take them orange lights down there, that could possibly help out with fish flies in the area. stuff like that. I even noticed on my house, we had less fish flies this year. I don't know if it was the numbers or what, but it seemed like this orange light had repelled them from the motel, so I thought that was something we could do down at the harbor.
Pass it over to Director Morissette.
Thanks to the chair. So we do actually turn off most of the lights down at the harbor. The lights that we have to keep on are considered navigational lights and for water safety. So when we have a big spotlight that's at the front of the water's edge. So if we were to turn that off, it would have quite a safety risk because there's no railings or fencing. So if it was really dark out there and somebody's walking, they could just fall into the water. Well, pardon me. So
And through the chair, please.
yeah, so it's something that we can look at with the orange navigational lights, but we do have a call out to the to small craft harbors, and they've put us in touch with the Canadian Coast Guard, who regulates the lighting that's required on site. It's important to realize that the harbor is not owned by the town of Essex. We lease the harbor, so we have to follow the requirements that they have through the Canadian Coast Guard, which they do have on site 2 navigational requirements. We're trying to get insight on what those specific requirements are. But having an orange light could change what their requirements are on site too. So it's something we'll take back, and we will ask the question when we actually get in contact with the Coast Guard to see what those requirements are. But at this time, the lights that we can shut off that don't affect public safety, we do shut those off on site to reduce the capacity of the fish.
Councilor Howard?
They just, I noticed that the lights did repel the fish flies, so I'm hoping that we can do it for the kids down there that have to shovel them and take care of them every year.
Questions from other members? Councilor Hammond?
An observation from years of experience down in Colchester. Although the lights may have deterred the fish flies, some I would suggest some more research into the matter, because we really didn't get inundated with fish flies as much as we normally do this year. A lot of it had to do with the cool nights and the strong breezes we had off the lake, but I didn't find it as a very dense year for fish flies, particularly in Colchester this year. So that might have another part of the reason why the fish fly numbers around your place were down.
Councilor Bondi? Or Mayor Bondi?
Thank you, Director. I heard the opposite, Councilor Hammond. I heard that there was more fish flies. I heard it was a banner year for fish flies. I met with boaters down there saying that the boaters say that they pay a lot of money. They're at the dock. They can't even enjoy it. It's so bad. And they were wondering, some of them were wondering if it leads to the poor quality of water at the beach. And I do think it's something that we need to look at. I love the Groves lights. I thought that was super cool that they did that this year. And we really don't want people going around doing other things to our streetlights, because we know that that has happened in the past. But it does create a lot of work for our staff too, to scoop them up. I don't know where they would go though. If we turned off our lights, they'd probably just come to Harrow, and lights would move to Harrow. So I don't know. I do think it's worthy of a discussion, and maybe some look-sees into what other municipalities do. I think Leamington does something, or I know Kingsville doesn't, but I think there might be another municipality that does something. I don't know if anybody else knows more information about that.
Director Morissette?
Through the chair. So we did reach out to Leamington, and they were under the same guidance that we were, because it's a commercial fishing harbor. There's certain regulations that the Canadian Coast Guard requires them, and certain aspects that they have to keep on. So similar to what we do, we reduce the lights that we can that aren't creating safety issues, and also following the regulations from the Canadian Coast Guard.
I thank our public works staff for being diligent in cleaning up the fish flies. I think we have a really high level of service when it comes to our street cleaner, and I notice it, and they go out extra when we have fish flies. So I just wanted to say thank you to the public works team for that.
Deputy Mayor Shepley?
Thank you, and through you. I just want to point out that I obviously am down at the harbor quite a bit in the summer, and I did notice a big difference when you guys shut the lights off. The only suggestion I would make, if it was possible to consider maybe for next season, is to extend the lights out by a few more weeks, because there always seems to be the stragglers that hang around, and then it's just, I think if they were out just a little bit longer, it would probably be more helpful for the staff as well. But otherwise, fantastic job done at the harbor this year. Thank you.
For members of council? Okay, bearing none, we'll move on to the next topic. Councilor Meady is running a bit late, so we're going to shift his topics to the end of the agenda tonight. So I will move on to locates and who requests them, presented by Mayor Bondi.
This is a popular question. Sorry, I gotta find my notes. This is a popular question I've got over the years, and a lot of people ask who approves them, and it seems like we get multiple people that have, like, if you live on Erie Road, you have locates go by, you have fiber goes by, and then a year later you have locates go by, fiber goes by. People's yards are continually getting cut up, and then something happens and there's some damage to their driveway, and then they don't know who to call. I'm just wondering if any other municipalities have better practices or models that we could steal and I know this is kind of like what we did with the streetlights, and we really solved a problem. And it's probably too high of a level of service, but if there was like a map that shows where people are, what they're doing, because we're constantly getting asked as counselors and we have like no answers. I'm like, I don't know. It's like one of those top 10 questions, and it's really disruptive to people because they're tearing up people's yards all the time and they don't even know who's doing what.
So is it specific to locates, or is it like what is it exactly that you're thinking would be needed to be communicated?
So, well, it starts with locates, and then obviously Bell Fiber goes through, or Cogeco goes through, or something goes through. It starts with locates. People want to know, hey, why is my front yard sprayed? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what's coming. And then the other thing is, these companies that do the locates and they leave the little flags, they never come back and pick up the little flags. That's a pet peeve of mine too. And I don't know if there's anything else that we could do to let people know, hey, Bell's going down Erie Road. Maybe it's even on our social media saying, Bell's going down Erie Road. This is the company that's doing the work. If you have a complaint, speak directly to Bell, because they're coming to us.
As far as the actual work, like let's just say we're on the topic of telecommunication companies, and fiber is a big push right now throughout all municipalities, especially rural ones. Those we don't really have a lot of control over the third party, so we do have a requirement to pull a permit for that work. But the control over their operations and their timing and their schedule is completely out of our control. We do request that those telecommunication companies do provide notice to the residents that they're going to impact. However, that doesn't always happen. And again, we don't really have a lot of control. They're not under contract with the municipality. They're just under permit. And many of them operate under entirely different legislation, which is governed either by the province or the federal government. As far as locates go, the reason why you see them so often and so frequently is because every person or company that wants to dig in Ontario has to call in locates, whether it's on private property or public property. As an infrastructure owner, we have an obligation to mark those utilities, whether they're in the ground or above the ground, within 5 days of receiving that request. And we do that all internally with our environmental services department. The flags themselves, no one's going to want to remove those because it's up to the contractor that's doing the work to maintain them and to maintain those marks. And no one wants to remove them because they don't want to be responsible for the damage that could ensue, right? So I would say that the majority of the locates that are happening right now are related to fiber, and a big push from our provincial government to service rural underserved areas. So we are likely going to see a lot more of this in the coming years. So we will look to see if there's something that we can do to help better communicate with the public. It's just going to be very difficult and rely a lot on those those contractors coming into our town to follow our rules. So, and our rules aren't always easily enforceable when we don't have control over them.
Council? Okay, so we'll go on to the next topic, which is from Councillor Verbeek. Oh, sorry, I'm skipping one. Mayor Bondi, and it is downtown garbage locations and misuse.
I know that we brought this up before, but I still think if I'm downtown Essex, for example, and I come out of around A1, it's too far, in my opinion, it's too far for garbages. If I'm if I'm grabbing a gum and I have a gum wrapper, I feel like we still need more garbages. And I feel like people are obviously not using them right, but I also feel like we still need more in the downtown areas. Also, people are just, I don't know why, and I know why we fake it. We're supposed to be good role models, but people are not adequately recycling in our downtown. It's like when we have the recycling bins, it's definitely not going in the recycling because there's an ice cream cone, a dog poop bag in there. Like that can't even possibly go in the recycling. If you're out and you have a pop can, like myself, if I'm out somewhere and I have a pop can and they recycle, I bring it home because I know it's going to be recycled there. If I throw it in a downtown garbage that says recycling, it's not going to be recycled because there's poop in there and ice cream. So just wondering, I know we had a notice of motion and we did get an update to council. Just wondering if we're done with the garbage pails downtown or if it's something we have to look at through budget.
Through the chair, yeah, the garbage cans that we've installed as part of the streetscape project, those are the ones that are intended to be placed. I would say in terms of recycling, I wouldn't use the word that we fake it, but we encourage it. We should be, as a municipality, setting that standard and providing the receptacles to provide recycling and garbage. Yeah, there are times that recycling gets contaminated. Unfortunately, that happens. There's not a whole lot that we can do about it. I would ask the community to do their best to follow those instructions and put recycling with recycling so that we can adequately recycle. However, that's very difficult to monitor, very difficult to police. If council feels that more garbage cans are needed in the cores, I would suggest that we have a conversation or we look at specific instances of where we're seeing the garbage being littered. We can probably address like some heavily littered areas, but with that being said, I do feel that if people are willing to litter, they're not willing to look for a garbage can is likely the situation. So whether you put 30 garbage cans or you put 100 garbage cans, that litter's still going to end up there. But if there are areas that are obviously are worse than others, then there may be a good indication that more garbages are needed. But from our operational staff, we haven't heard that that's the situation. So if council has any situations that they feel a specific area would be good, then they should let me know and I can look at it further.
Garen?
Sure. Just a question. When it comes to how many containers we're going to put out in our downtown core or in our municipal buildings like our arenas, how do we figure that out now? Is there a guideline that we follow, or do we just make up a number based on how many we have?
Through the chair. So when we did the streetscape projects, we hired a landscape engineer, like a landscape architect that would have put that plan together. There's various factors that would go into that. So proximity to businesses, the types of businesses, the ones that generate the most waste. So you tend to see a lot more waste in like single use type of businesses, like a coffee shop or somewhere like a sandwich shop or things like that would generate a lot more recycling and garbage. But generally that's what they put together. They have to also fit all the other amenities that we have to put in our core without being too cluttered as well. We still need to maintain the core come wintertime, things like that. So, we have to fit the bike racks, we have to fit all the trees, everything else. So, but that being said, a garbage can, like if there is specific littering and we need additional garbage cans, we can put them along building faces or we can try to find room or move things around to make it work. I'm just not having any reports from any of the public that are complaining about a garbage can, except for we had the one at in front of the Bank of Montreal, where we were hearing a lot of an overflowing garbage can, and that it was constantly overflowing every week. So we added an additional garbage can to try and capture the volume of garbage, but not necessarily a complaint about littering.
Chair. So if we didn't do a streetscape and it was just a downtown core, we would just assume how many businesses within a block and how many garbage cans we should put out? Like, there's gotta be some sort of science behind it. Every municipality's got to deal with it, right?
To be honest with you, I'm not really sure. I think that in the past and with most municipalities that I've worked for, we've always done it based on complaints and based on littering. So if there were problematic areas, we would address them. There wasn't really any science behind it in my experience. There may be some guidelines out there that landscape architects use to determine the best places, but I know that when we asked and we questioned the landscape architect during the streetscape designs, we asked how they determined the number, and the explanation I got was the same one that I gave you about garbage generating businesses and trying to, and the other thing too is also trying to keep them like close to amenity areas, right? So if there was a place that we were creating to rest, like a rest area with benches, we would want a garbage can close by to a bench so that somebody could, consume their product and then throw it out within an immediate distance from that bench. So just things like that. No real hard science that I'm aware of.
Businesses that have tenants that live above them. Are those type of businesses, are those tenants typically disposing of their trash in behind the building in a common trash can, or are they bringing it to the front road on the main street and it's getting picked up there?
Through the chair, I wouldn't know exactly that. I'd probably have to pass it to Development Services, Director Chadwick, to comment on that, because there may be a variety of different situations when it comes to like residential on the top. I do know that a lot of the businesses do receive curbside, and then some of them also have like their own waste receptacles in the back. I think a variety of that depends on, the type of business, the type of waste, and the volume of waste is a big one too. So I'm not sure if Director Chadwick would have any knowledge on that, or Director Malinger-Glow.
Comment on that a bit. So we do give property counts to our GFL, our waste collection provider, and it may be a mix. It may be upfront, it may be in behind, but they are picking up at the tenant locations as well downtown right now.
We may get some of that residential garbage being put in a bag in our garbage cans on the road, because they maybe have one bag and instead of going down the steps to the back and doing, or the one in the back's full. So they're using the one down the road that we provide. I could see that being a possibility.
Yeah, so when we received the report of problem this summer on the downtown locations and the garbage that was accumulating, we actually slated our communication student to do some proactive educational, you should be recycling, you should be doing this. So a video should be coming out very shortly. We'll encourage council to share it, but it's similar to the balloon video that was created earlier this year, just specific to downtown garbage use. So that's coming soon. Any other questions from members? Councilor McGuire-Blaise?
Thanks, through the chair. Are we using all of, I know at least last year there was some garbage cans from the old streetscape behind the arena. Are we now utilizing all of the garbage cans that are or were located back there? I know we had talked about refinishing those, sandblasting and repainting. Are those all now being utilized?
Chair, I'd have to check with the staff to see if they are all being utilized, but I know we were trying to phase out the older drum style bins for the newer, fancier looking ones. I believe that most, if not all of them, were used, but I'll have to get back to council on that one.
Fair. And then this is something that I know I've brought up at least twice with administration from the BIA because the businesses are asking for more garbages as well. So is it possible for us to get a quote for how much the garbages are, a recent updated quote on how much the garbages are that we can bring to the BIA? And maybe it's an initiative that the BIA can take on and purchase some garbage cans, because I do know there's been complaints about down at the Libro Bank with garbage down there. They removed the garbage can that was in down by the Domino's, which resulted in more garbage being put into that bin outside of BMO. Shinkles has asked for more garbage cans outside their place. Even down Onyx, down by that plaza, looking for a garbage can. So I do know that the businesses are asking for this, and if it's something that our streetscape is now done, we've utilized all the garbages that we have, and it's now becoming a budget issue, I would like to present a quote to the BIA and say, listen, it's going to cost us X amount of dollars. Where do you think garbages might be best utilized? And are you willing to front either the full cost or partial payment to help us with the cost of garbages? Because I remember a couple of years ago when I first brought this up, it was not cheap. So that's my request to take back, to get us a quote so I can bring it to the BIA, present it to them, and see if it's something that they're interested in doing.
Councillor Hammond.
Not about garbage, but recycling, so it was brought up already. So I just wanted to ask if there's any tools that the town has to ensure that commercial businesses are actually recycling properly.
Through the chair. So that's broadening up the topic just a touch, but what I can say is I can bring that back to Mark, our manager of communications, and see if he can tie that messaging into the promotional video. We do for that rely a lot on USWA as the authority. I know that that's recently shifted because now the producers are responsible. So soon council will start seeing correspondence from USWA. And you're right, Councillor Hammond, we may need to start taking action on how we can advocate for commercial businesses to recycle properly. So we have 3 minutes left. Is there any other questions from council on Councillor McGuire, please?
Mine's not a question, it's actually a comment. In Essex Center, the BIA actually has a bin that all of their businesses know about for cardboard. So it doesn't help with like aluminum, but we do have a cardboard bin, and it's located behind the Dollar Tree in that parking lot, that we regularly send to our commercial businesses, that it is available for them to put their cardboard. Most businesses is just cardboard is what they're trying to get rid of. But downtown Essex Center, they do have that, and we regularly tell our businesses that it's available to them.
Good conversation. Any more questions? Okay, we'll move on to the next topic. It was presented by Councillor Verbeek, and it is electronic voting buttons.
Okay, through the chair, it's just when I served, I sat in for our deputy mayor at county council, and they had the electronic voting. I was really impressed. I thought it was an excellent way to go about things. I'm just curious if we can look into that potentially for this council, maybe perhaps in the near future. Is it something as simple as putting a program onto our tablets on our devices, or would it require buying devices for everybody? How would that look? And if administration is familiar with this, that county council uses, I liked everything about it. I know sometimes even here, I'm a little bit lazy with my voting. Sometimes I'll be jotting down thoughts and I just kind of slide my hand up, and it's just a lot more clear when I'm not sure if the rest of council is familiar with how it works, but every time that county council comes to vote on an issue, it comes right up on your screen, and you just vote electronically, and it unfolds right in front of you. You can see that Councillor Guerin and Councillor Hammond voted in support, and the deputy mayor and Councillor Verbeek opposed, and the public also sees that. And I think that it's a really transparent way to move forward. Wondering if it's a huge big ticket item or something as simple as a software we could load onto our devices.
I'll pass over to Director Malandrucolo. He can review, he's done a little bit of investigating into the options.
So through the chair, when we do our expansion into the new town hall, one of the things that we're looking at is providing for that functionality for council to be available to do something like that. But prior to doing that, we would have to revise our procedural bylaw. So our procedural bylaw is currently in the revision phase. And one of the things that our procedural bylaw requires is for a recorded vote to be voted on by council. So if we're going to allow electronic voting, what that means is every vote that's done through electronic voting is going to be a recorded vote. So if council is of the opinion that they want to move forward with electronic voting, we'll have to provide some amendments in our procedural bylaw to allow for that. And then we can move forward with that process. What we found through canvassing the other municipalities is that it's currently being done in the county and in Chatham. Tecumseh thought about doing it, but then they pulled back because they didn't explain exactly why, but they said there were some reservations, and so they pulled back on making the amendments required to move forward with it. What we heard from Chatham is that it does slow down the process a little bit. It makes council meetings a little bit longer. So what they have done in their procedural bylaw is they've restricted that type of voting to certain bylaws and resolutions. So non-controversial bylaws and resolutions would still be passed through a regular vote. And then bylaws and resolutions that might be more controversial would be electronic voting, so that it was done that way. And they said that the feedback that we received is that it's had so much more time to council meetings than you would expect. Because of the functionality, the software functionality, and the timing that it takes for it to process the votes. And I guess too is that some councilors have there's a delay in councilors being able to use the product. So it doesn't always it adds a significant amount of time to council meetings, and it doesn't always outweigh the benefits that it has.
I appreciate that, and that you are looking into it through the chair. I found it moved things along very quickly when I used it at the county. And I wonder, are you also looking into perhaps, if we do have a fair section of our agendas that are consensus items. I don't think we need to have our consensus items recorded. However, I think having us vote electronically, like I say, it brings forth transparency. And also, if I'm a resident and I want to see if Councillor Verbeek is really listening to me, I'm going to see how she voted on this issue. It's there. It's transparent. It's right available to the public. If it's not a big ticket item I think it's an option that I hope we can look at seriously moving forward, especially when we are making so many changes moving into the new facility.
Have a question?
One thing, just to our clerk, I'm just wondering on Kingsville uses one. I've watched their meetings and their votes flash, so their votes are there. The county uses it. It works good at county. Where it does bog down is when there's a change in a motion. That's where it tends to bog things down. But beyond that, I find it an exceptional way to run a council meeting. It allows everybody to vote to be cast. And I know at county, while every vote is flashed up there to us, when you're watching the meetings back, not every vote is flashed on the camera. So I still think there would be a modus for recorded vote, so that it's a requirement then that vote is flashed for a period of time. Because we've had it on a few occasions at county where I've gone back to see how people voted out of curiosity on controversial issues, and sometimes we can't find that vote. So I know that it's not counted as a recorded vote, and it was a question that came up at one time at county. So I don't necessarily know that we have to change it. I have no problem with changing it, though. I think this would be an exceptional way for us to run our meetings. I think it would be, for transparency issues, it would be fantastic, and I would fully support it.
So I'm looking at county minutes, and a recorded vote to me how I understand it is when you look at the minutes, you can see 8 people, 8 votes. And right now I'm looking at the county and it just says, I'm going to votes that I know we pushed the button for. And it just says, carried. It doesn't say, it doesn't take up a whole space and give how everybody voted. I would support changing our procedure bylaw. I think we need to change some things in our procedure bylaw. If we need to change our procedure bylaw, that's fine. But yeah, so this one is. I'm being corrected right now and I'll take it. So no, it's good because I'm looking, all of our names are on here. So we can see it. No, not on all of them. Those might be the raising of the hands. So at the county for non-controversial votes, we raise our hands. For technical ones that should be on record, we push our button. The one thing I will say, because I go back and I watch our meetings, nobody can tell really how council members vote. It's basically only how I vote. And sometimes I'll say unanimous if we all vote in favor, and sometimes I'll say like 1 or 2 opposed. So I would like to increase the transparency because sometimes I don't, once in a while, I don't see a hand go up in favor or I don't see a hand go up opposed, but I know that enough were in favor. So I think that I think we could do some work on here.
I think this is good feedback. And one of the things that we can see is we can see if there's a supplier who will allow us to vote without it being recorded, but still have the vote done electronically. And we can come back to council and let them know.
Okay, we have Councillor Guerin up next.
Last term of council, it seemed like there's lots of, they must have been recorded votes because Garon X it had everybody in there lots of times. With the voting though, if it just says carried, if it's unanimous, it could just say carried. If there's one opposed, all it's got to say is carried, Garon opposed, done. And it's all, and doesn't have to say everyone else is in favor of it. So to me, I don't know if there's a huge problem and we need to fix it, then I don't care if we go this way or not. But I think without changing all of our ways we do things in our current bylaw, we could simply just say, look, if one person opposed it, it's carried and that person's name is shown as opposed.
Great feedback. What I can say is eScribe is the program we currently use. When we created the budget for Town Hall, we did include an upgrade to eScribe, which would give us this feature and ability. So we'll make sure we incorporate that in any changes going forward. Any more questions from members of council before we move on? Okay, bearing none, we will move to Mayor Bondi, who presented Victoria, Hanlon, South Talbot stoplights.
CAO, it's just a popular question. It actually came up when we were in our OPP ride along with actually one of the OPP officers saying that he sees a little bit of a blind spot there. I do know that there's no appetite to do a 4-way stop, and I understand that. Like I come through there every day, sometimes twice a day, but I think it's something that maybe we could have a little brief discussion about. Maybe in the future we want to have a traffic study done there. So that's Victoria and South Talbot, and then we did bring up Victoria and Hanlon. I was on Victoria today and the Hanlon stop sign was almost impossible for me to see because there was actually like a contractor there on the side of the road with a trailer. So I was driving and I probably was 100 meters away from the stop sign, but you can't really see it. So I don't know if there's any markings we can do on the road there for that one, but just generally talking about Victoria speeding issues in general.
Mr. Gerard to provide any further input.
Through the chair. So on the Victoria Hanlon stop sign, we could add the stop ahead sign to try and bring some awareness to the stop ahead. We did have one temporarily installed when we first made that a 3-way stop, but we could definitely review that. I'll make a note. For the South Talbot and Victoria intersection, we did I believe it was on council's request actually to look at that intersection to kind of like improve safety and look at safety measures. Our recommendation back then was not to make it a 4-way stop. I believe our recommendation would still be the same today. However, we did reduce the speed limit. If council recalls, it was 80 coming into town right near the S bend, and we actually moved it and changed it to 50 all the way back to Batten side road. So that was a result of that report. But right now, we haven't had any complaints about the intersection, and looking at the accident rates in the area, there's not a significant amount of accidents occurring there. So just based on that, just high level look and the recommendation we provided before wouldn't be to make it a 4-way stop. But if there's other rationale or council wanted to look at a traffic study or trying to do that, then we would have to include it in the 26 budget.
Questions? Got Counselor Garen. I'll go to Counselor McGuire-Blaze next.
Thanks for the chair. Yeah, I've heard complaints, but nothing official. Like no one's emailed me officially and said they have a major issue with that intersection. I think it's far more safe now than it was when there was access from the highway. Much more safer. There was lots of accidents before and lots of near misses before, but could it be a 4-way? I'm okay with slowing people down it, but I don't really notice, like, I maneuver good. I did notice the other day coming back in from McGregor, OPP parked and doing radar, catching people coming into town, which I think is helpful. And then the new 3-way at Hanlon and Victoria, I think it's working well, especially for cars wanting to access Victoria from Hanlon. Used to have to wait a long time to get on there. Traffic was coming pretty quick with the row of trees that are going on the boulevards all the way down. Sometimes it's a lot of blind spots. So I think it's safe. It's too bad that we couldn't put the stop sign closer to the actual intersection because of the driveway and all that stuff, but I think it's working pretty good. And again, the only complaints I get from people is that they now have to stop. Not that they have to stop is the only complaint I get. Why do we have to stop? You know? So, but I try to explain to them why we put it there with the connectivity of the trails and everything. I think it's working okay.
Thanks through the chair. I'm on the same page as Councillor Garen. With Victoria and South Talbot though, I do notice that when they're coming into town off Victoria, they're stopping at the pedestrian crosswalk. It has happened probably every fourth time I'm at that stop sign, waiting for traffic, somebody stops thinking that it is a 4-way stop. So I think that the confusion is that pedestrian crosswalk, people assume it's a 4-way stop automatically and they're stopping. And then you're just like sitting there like, go. So I would like to take a look at that aspect of it. Like maybe there's a sign that we can say like, I know that I don't know exactly the wording of the sign, but I know there's a sign that says like other traffic stops, like the side road stop, or like yours is a throughway, like something along those lines. I think that might be the frustration where people are waiting to cross the street and somebody stops and they're like, okay, it's not my turn. So maybe we can look at something like that, some kind of signage, especially coming into town off Victoria. And then as for the Hanlon and Victoria 3-way stop, I do see that the problem would be going out of town on Victoria. I'm wondering if maybe taking away another parking spot. I know we don't like taking away parking spots, but to make that stop sign a little bit more visible, maybe looking at taking away a parking spot might help. So that way you're not so close before you see that that stop sign. And I do know that the biggest concern for most residents are the people who live there who now have to hear the traffic stop and go. And unfortunately, that does happen. I have a stop sign right out front of my house. I wish it wasn't there, but it is. And I do think that it has created a safer space for people crossing the street to access the trails. I'm for the 3-way stop, but maybe we do need to look at removing one parking space going out of town so they can see the stop sign.
Any other members of council? Okay. Bearing none, we'll move on to our next topic. So it was presented by Councillor McGuire-Blaze, and it is bylaw standards for tall grass and home state.
Thanks through the chair. So I brought this up just because obviously in the summertime we get a lot of complaints for property standards, tall grass, things like that. But what I have started to notice is that for me, the property standard, once it's complete, is not my property standard, and it's not the neighbor's property standard either, the ones who are putting in a complaint. So earlier today, I had sent council a couple of images and I'm sorry I didn't get them so you could show them here, but there's two examples of properties that were both come into compliance. And I took those pictures after they had come into compliance or after a bylaw had visited and asked the resident to cut the lawn. I'm wondering if we have an appetite to say, listen, yeah, the lawn is cut. It's shorter than it was. But you still have to tidy up around your bushes. You still have to tidy up around the corners of the trees and around your house. There's cut lawn, there's mowed lawn, and then there's maintained lawn. So I'm wondering what the rest of council feels. How do they feel? Do we think that just weed whacking the weeds down is good enough, or do we want to update our standards?
Thank you, Councilor McGuire. Please, before I pass it to Director Malandrucolo, I know that there is a notice of motion right now to take a look at the entire property standards bylaw, so we can definitely consider that as part of the amendments. Yeah, sure.
So I know that notice of motion is here, and so putting it on here, I kind of wanted to have council talk about it so our administration knew where we want it to go with this. Like, what is council's appetite? Do we want to really look into this and really make it specific, or are we kind of happy with the way things are?
That's Director Malandrucolo for some comments.
So through the chair, as discussed, our property standards bylaws is going to be in review during 2026. So we expect that by the end of 2026, we'll have a new proposed draft property standards bylaw for council's review. The information that you provided today and that council's provided is helpful and informative towards drafting that bylaw. In response to this subject coming up on the committee of the whole, we looked into our current activities under this bylaw. So I can give you some feedback on what we do. So first of all, council might be interested to hear that we've done about 29 contractor lawn cuts this summer. So those are 29 properties where we tried to work with the property owner to get voluntary compliance, and we couldn't. That was a small amount of the properties that we actually dealt with. So many more properties we actually dealt with and we received voluntary compliance. So when we attend the properties to receive voluntary compliance, what we do is, if it's just a grass issue, we'll actually go out and measure and make sure that the grass is less than 8 inches tall. If it's not less than 8 inches tall, we'll work with the property owner to have them do that within 48 hours. The town always strives to receive voluntary compliance and understands that some of the property owners are dealing with possibly health issues or other issues that will not allow them to comply with something like that. If that's the case, we may give an additional 48 hours. But usually the property is dealt with within 2 days. Otherwise, we go out and we perform the contractor cut. When we perform the contractor cut, we charge the cost of the contractor plus an administration fee. When we're dealing with properties that have more than just a grass issue, it's a lot more of an involved process. Especially, as you can imagine, there may be something like a farm property where it's a large acreage and there's a lot of issues to deal with. We have also had situations in the past where there was a property standard issue. We cleaned up the property, and it ended up in a lawsuit against the town. So there's certain things that we try to do as bylaw officers to deal with the situation in a way where we can get it done with voluntary compliance, and it can be done to a proper standard. Again, understanding where this topic is coming from and where your comments are coming from, we can look at other property standards bylaws to see if there's something more specific or other things we can do. But I think from bylaws perspective, there may be some outliers regardless, and properties that we're trying to deal with that, just the best standard is not always that standard that you might expect.
Vaughn, I have a couple in queue. Director Chadwick alerted me that the there's actually a specific bylaw. It's not through property standards, so it is the tall grass and nuisance bylaw. And so if council, based on this discussion, may wish to go into a regular council meeting and make a notice of motion if you're not happy with the wording of that. Just wanted to provide that clarity. So I had Councillor Verbeek.
Through you, Chair. So because we're going to be addressing this, I also want to reiterate my feelings on this. I've spoke about this a few times, not so much this term. Last time I tried to bring forth No Mow May. I've very often, every chance I get, I try to advocate for all our pollinators myself. I'd love to see a bylaw that says you got to let all your dandelions get big and yellow and go to seed so the bees can eat before you can cut. So we're on two different ends of the spectrum. I like that we aren't, how mindful we are before we go take it to the next level to enforce our current standards, by stepping in and allowing the homeowner and then giving a little lenience if they need another 48 hours. As far as like the weed whacking and the trim, honestly, I get on my husband if he weed whacks too close to wildflower stands. Let the ditch go, let those flowers come to seed and feed our pollinators. So I'm at the actual opposite end of the spectrum. So when you're looking at this issue and the nuisance and the tall grass bylaw, or as it's standards, if we're looking at making changes, I hope they're not too severe, because I again would try to address to be more lenient. And like I say, I've brought forward No Mow May like twice now. I know it's not going to happen because there's no desire for that, but I think it was this term, I had a conversation and asked, is there any way we could consider leniency in the early spring for people that want to leave their grass on a little bit longer in the early spring for the all the critters that are awakening, So I just wanted to get back out there and, like, I get it. This is a pendulum like it should be, and there's varying opinions, but I wouldn't want to get any more strict with our standards there.
I think it's important to note that we have a mix of rural and urban areas as well, right? So when you have rural areas, they're more prone maybe to have that leniency versus an urban area where there's consistent walkability and things like that. So I do have Mayor Bondi up next and then Councillor Hammond.
CAO, I see this as a big community consultation and council discussion. I see this as something where I am hoping that we can bring it to the public and present that continuum, that pendulum, that this side and that side, and say, what do you want to see as a community, and where do you want to see it in the urban areas? What do you want to see in the rural areas? What do you want to see? Do you want it, clean, completely clean cut, or are you a little less clean cut? And then we have to staff it accordingly. But this is going to be contentious. It's not going to be something easy, because no matter what we do, probably 50% of the community will disagree with us. And if we want to go and enforce more regulations, then those folks could be really upset with us. And right now, if we're not enforcing really strict regulations because we're just enforcing a bylaw and it's not strict enough, then we have other folks upset with us. So no matter what we do, this is something that is going to make a lot of people unhappy. So what my hope would be is that the community owns this bylaw, that we go to get public feedback and say, what do you want on your street in terms of, like, it could be boats, trailers, long grass, people parking on cars. Like I have a host of pictures as well. And what is acceptable in what location? Do we allow trailers and you just slap some paint on them and that's okay? Like, I don't know. I'm not going to voice an opinion, yay or nay, because I really want us to do what the community wants us to do. I think it's a long process, but I think we need to have a lot of discussion on this with the community, because once we get a bylaw, then we're probably going to have to bring in outside resources to do blitzes and to bring everybody into compliance. So I don't think it's anything short that's going to happen. And then at the same time, if we could have the folks that want to do No Mow May, you have to register. And you register and you are a No Mow May household, you get a sign. And so everybody knows. And I think there's a lot of work to do on this file and just beginning.
Hammond, next.
And through you, I just got a question regarding what is our standard as far as our town contractor cut? Can anybody answer that as to what are we doing when we go in and make one of these cuts? Then a follow-up, please.
Are you referring to the length that we require per the bylaw?
Oh, say someone complains, that my neighbor's, his grass is too tall and stuff like that, and he doesn't wanna cut it, and the town eventually goes in. I'm just trying to understand what the property looks like when we're done with it.
So through the chair, I did see a couple results of what it looks like. What they do is that they deal with the length of the grass. The pictures that I saw, there's not weed whacking or trimming. It's dealing with the length of the grass, putting it down to a size that's below the 8 inches. From the pictures I looked at, it looked to be about 4 inches. And it puts them into the compliance with the tall grass bylaw, and I think that's it. But I could confirm with the contractor if council's interested.
So I think that's kind of where we need to set our standard. If we're gonna go in there and do it, then do it the way we want it done, and then charge them accordingly and set our standard to that. Otherwise, if we're setting a standard and going in and only doing a half-ass job, then we're not being good representatives of that.
Counselor Garen?
On the 29, that we have had to go in there, what would be like occupied properties versus non-occupied properties? We see a lot of the issues is the properties that have no builds on them and they're letting them go. They're future builds, but there's nothing on them now. Is that the majority of them we're getting, or are we getting them from like neighboring houses and are we getting, of those 29, are we getting some multiples from the same properties, or are they all unique?
Through the chair, unfortunately, I don't have that information, but I can get that information and come back to council with it.
Well, I can agree that some of the standards could be better. I think it's a slippery slope, though. I think we've got a bylaw standard out there right now that I think we're having a hard time enforcing as it is. There's lots of properties, and if we wanted to be picky, we could probably drive out of here tonight and find some. Until we're able to control the one we have, I don't see why we would try and make it more strict. And there's some ability issues to get around and do the work that needs to be done. And again, my standards and your standards could be very different. So I think we need to, I'm happy with the one we got. I just wish we could have a little more enforcement, and to make that standard first before we look at doing anything further.
The chair, those are really good comments. I think one of the things that we need to concern ourselves with is if we do expect a higher standard and we expect to toughen up our bylaws, we may need to bring on more bylaw staff or a contract person or something like that to help us do things like this, because currently with our current bylaw staff, we're going to get to the point where we're overwhelmed trying to keep up with stuff like this.
I certainly am not. I don't want to sound like I'm picking on bylaw. I know they're stretched to the limit. I wish that we could maybe do some more reminders to the community, maybe some more education to remind them to do their part. I mean, that's the end of the day. If we all did our part, we wouldn't even have to have these discussions. And that's the key to it. There's a lot of business owners too that have properties with equipment laying around and they just leave the grass grow, and they could do a better job as well. We all could chip in and do a little better.
Discussion here. I can say my short time as CAO, probably the number one topic I hear from council and residents, bylaw in some form. So that's been eye-opening. I agree we'd have to evaluate our resources and make sure that we're equipped. But often what we're seeing as well when it comes to these tall grass complaints can be the complete reverse, where people are upset that we went and cut their grass because they're butterfly gardens or things like that, right? So definitely going to be a large project with lots of consultation. So we have time for one more follow-up. Councillor Verbeek?
A question. I did want to be clear. I'm about the property standards, junk and collectibles, and that I'm not talking about the property standards, talking about the greenery piece of it, and the tall grass and the wildflowers and the bushes. I wonder, is it possible, or is this just out of the realm of reality, to have, while you're looking at this, perhaps rule standards a little more lax than in town? Is that a possibility? Or, say Ward 1 and Ward 4 have a little more stringent tall grass weed standards than, say, the rural farm community. I'm just wondering if that is even an option.
Take that back, and when we come back with any proposed revisions, make sure we incorporate and consider that. Yeah, one last one.
Here. I would just like to see, if we're gonna do some education, I don't think we have, like, let's say you have to weed whack around your trees and your bushes. Like, that's the education that we need. 8 inches is very tall. Like, that's a very tall lawn. So I think that 8 inches is way more than enough. But when you're doing a cut, it should be the entire thing. There shouldn't be strips of land because your lawnmower didn't get there. You should still have to be able to take care of that and maintain that. That's still tall grass. It's still tall weeds. So I feel like our bylaws should at least say that, like, the entire lawn, the entirety of your property needs to be 8 inches, not just wherever your lawnmower can get. Like, that's, if you can't get around a whole tree and you just leave the tall grass, I don't see how that is acceptable. Where when we're passing it and we're saying this is good, you've come into compliance, there's still tall grass. That's the frustrating part of it. So I would like to see that tightened up, but thank you.
So we will now move on to topic number 3, which was presented by Councillor Mady, and it was the concept of shared wastewater management facilities and modular systems. Councillor Mady, if you can give us a brief description.
Thank you, and to you, Chair. Yeah, first, my apologies. Sorry, I was detained by a fire alarm drill. I couldn't leave it. This shared wastewater management and modular systems. This is an idea that a while back I had read a paper from the Waterloo area where they had done a study on different ways of getting wastewater and sewers to a more rural area, realizing they were developing quickly and then what they needed. And it always had me thinking that there's different ways of getting this done. And then just recently there was a town in the States that they were close. There were about 1,000 population, close to a larger city, and they were able to, and they're about a 20-minute drive down the interstate, so a fair distance apart even. And they were able to come up with a shared wastewater system that allowed a even distribution of that cost throughout the entire area. So this is my idea, and the reason why I'm thinking that maybe we could start looking at a different way of getting wastewater in. We have a lot of different problems in Essex, being the fact that we're sharing wastewater with a different municipality, being the fact that we have some real rural designed wastewater treatment plants that are in areas that are going to be possibly developed much more. So maybe what we're doing is not exactly the best way of doing it, and we could get a couple more ideas on how to do it. That's why I brought this one forward.
I'm going to pass it over to Director Gerard for comment.
Through the chair. Yeah, I mean, the concept of partnering or a larger water, like, let's say, wastewater treatment facility for a larger system is a practical thought. Like, the difficulty really comes to getting the wastewater to those treatment facilities. So it's very costly to get that wastewater over to another municipality or another wastewater treatment system. So to give you an example, like, if let's just say we wanted to consolidate some of our, and we've had this conversation at the council, to is let's just say we wanted to consolidate our wastewater systems in Colchester and Harrow, and then we were going to, bring wastewater from, just let's say to solve our issue in Colchester, we're going to bring wastewater from Colchester out to the Harrow plant. We're going to build our plant there, and we're going to build, let's call it a mega plant or a larger plant. There's a significant amount of money that would go into having to pump that much sewage from Colchester to Harrow. So that would be in the tens of millions of dollars likely in itself, right? So there's the large cost of transporting that wastewater in communities that are adjacent to each other or have systems that are actually fairly close or they can be interconnected in some way. There's some fairly good logic in doing that. And we have a micro situation of this in Essex where we actually have Ward 1 that is split into 2 wastewater systems. So we have a wastewater system that sheds sewage into a property in the town of Lakeshore, which is the Northeast Lagoon system. And then the other portion of Ward 1 actually goes to the mechanical plant on the other side of Highway 3 at the Essex Pollution Control Plant. So we have that here, right, in Essex alone. And just the cost of trying to bring those wastewater systems together and build a plant wasn't economical when we built the plant in 2006. So that's not to say that the best approach isn't to eventually even consolidate that system in Ward 1. And that's something that our service master plan contemplate. And those are the best types of exercises to come up with these types of ideas and review these from a technical and economical standpoint, and considering the environment and all the other factors involved in making these types of decisions. So what I can say is we've done a couple of environmental assessments here in my time in Essex for wastewater, one being the Colchester sewage system. And then we also are working in partnership with Amherstburg for the McGregor system. Both of those contemplated those types of ideas, consolidating wastewater systems, creating a modular plant or a smaller plant on an alternate site. So when we did the Colchester sewage lagoon, we contemplated whether Colchester Bay itself should have its own consolidated sewage treatment plant that the town would then operate and maintain and have the flexibility to use as we needed. However, the cost of that is astronomical. So a small package plant to service a subdivision of that size would be in the ballpark of $5 to $12 million. So when you're assessing your needs, it made more sense from an economical and environmental perspective to consolidate those services within the Colchester site itself and build a mechanical plant to collect all of the sewage. So we do those assessments as part of our environmental assessments. And we take that approach. We try to take every practical approach that we can, whatever would serve the community and the environment the best. So we do that on some level. Unfortunately, we have quite a bit of sprawl, even in Essex, right? The distance between wastewater facilities is very large. And that same practicality is there for other municipalities. So let's just say we wanted to have wastewater in Ward 1 and we wanted to partner with another municipality. Well, the closest wastewater system is very far from Ward 1, right? So that's in a nutshell, I think, a pretty broad explanation, but I hope that helps.
Mentioned that we are in a shared situation with Amherstburg, correct? Which we already know has some downfalls to it. I'm just wondering though if it's wouldn't be a possibility in the future for east of Erie to get some help from maybe the nearby Kingsville. Whether that could be a possibility or not in the future is something to think about, because we're definitely in the future, we're going to have to address that.
Point of clarification too. So for Amherstburg and the concept of sharing, I just wanted to touch on that as well. So that sewage treatment plant, the lagoons, are in Amherstburg. They're owned by Amherstburg and maintained and operated by Amherstburg. So they're not a shared facility. They own it. What we have committed to is doing a joint environmental assessment because of our interests in that project. So we have a large amount of developable land in McGregor that is serviced by that sewage treatment plant. So the concept of sharing is ensuring our interests are aligned with Amherstburg's. But the services, the pipes, the treatment plant, that is all owned and operated by. We have no financial stake in it. We are not owners and operators.
Other questions from members of council? Yeah, Councilor Meady?
Against you, Chair. Yeah, that's another reason why I keep thinking about there's got to be a better way. So even when we're looking at the Amherstburg situation there, there's a very good chance that plant's going to come back and need to be mechanical, and it's going to be tens of millions of dollars to do that plant. And we're still not going to own it at that point, right? It'll still be an Amherstburg facility. So I'd like to see, if we're investing Essex money, that we end up owning the Essex infrastructure. So that's why, I thought that there might be a way that we could, if we're going to invest tens of millions of dollars, let's invest tens of millions of dollars on being able to move that McGregor wastewater maybe south or maybe east. And see about keeping that money in our own municipality. That's why I'm thinking of along these lines.
Gerard, although we may not have ownership, when we do a financial contribution, we do get serviceability. So we get an allotment of service that we can use for future developments. So in a sense, we're purchasing service. We're almost buying in to have the ability to grow. I'll pass it to Director Gerard.
I'm going to mention something very similar to that, but in addition, there are a lot of models that we can pull from across the province. A good example of that would be Union Water. So Union Water is a plant that services water for multiple municipalities. There could be a joint ownership, or there could be certain decisions are made at a board level and we get votes. There are different models of how that financial contribution and how it's run could be. We're nowhere near that. We don't even know what the cost or the solution is. But eventually, if council has an interest in growing those lands in McGregor, there is going to be a conversation about this, right? And how that looks. We assume, and I think it's fair to assume, that Amherstburg is going to look for some type of financial contribution from this municipality if we want to go forward with any type of improvements. But we don't know what that financial contribution looks like, and we don't really know what the terms could look like either. So there's a lot of work that would have to go into that.
I think it's great discussion. I think these are areas where we have to try to be innovative to save taxpayer dollars at the end of the day. So thank you for raising it, a committee of the whole, because for us to partner with the municipality could potentially save millions of dollars, right? So overall, the underlying principle that you brought forward is great. Okay, any more questions before we move on to the next topic? Mayor Bondi?
It's a really good topic. I believe one thing that we should do in the next term of council, because I think it's kind of too late now, is really sit together and say, as a council, as a community, as an administration, where do we want focused development? Where do we absolutely want to focus and make gains? Because right now I feel like Colchester, oh, Harrow, oh, McGregor, oh, Essex, expand into Kingsville or Lakeshore. And I feel like we have a lot of irons in the flames and not one particular focus. We applied before, for money for Colchester, then we didn't apply. Like, where do we want to go? Where do we want to go? And let's make a roadmap to get there. Because I think that personally, I don't know, I think Ward 1 would be the place where we would want to focus, but maybe it isn't. Maybe that's where the community doesn't want to go. I have recent calls about expanding, calls from interested parties in Lakeshore, but we're kind of at this stalemate. I know we're doing that study, but yeah, great conversation. I just think that council and the community need to really early on, one of the first tasks in the new term of council is figure out where exactly we want to develop and then go after it.
Before we move on. Okay, bearing none. So the next topic by Councillor Meady would be water meter replacement.
Through you, Chair, I see this is my punishment for being late. Now I gotta take them all out. The water meter replacements is I've had a few questions, comments, concerns by residents on the age of their water meters, how to get them replaced, and if the town has some kind of way of knowing how many outdated water meters there are and the plan forward on replacing them. And I mean, I can even find myself in that situation as a place out that we are renovating has a very, very old water meter that doesn't even have the ability to be scanned. If somebody wanted to read that one, they would actually have to come into the house still and do it, which I don't think has been around for a while. So that's where I was just kind of going with that, was what we had for a plan there.
The chair. Yeah, so I mean, I've got some stats that I pulled too. So I mean, we did have a large amount of water meters backlogged that were, let's call them dead meters. We weren't able to read. We became aware of it before the water billing was brought in-house. But unfortunately, because of COVID, we had to put a big pause on the water meter replacement program because we weren't able to enter homes. But since we took over ELK billing, what we realized, the number back then when we took it over was 560 meters that were dead. Since January 2024, when we took over the billing, we've actually changed 870 with internal staff, which is averaging about 45 meters a month. We have about 100 left to be fully caught up. But that being said, we expect that we're going to have to continue to replace meters on an ongoing basis for two reasons. One, they tend to just die. Sometimes the battery will die in them, and we need to replace them. And then others we're just kind of at that time frame with the meters where the batteries are dying. So we're kind of seeing, like, even on a month-to-month basis, about 20 to 30 meters having to be replaced after that month's meter reads. So we expect to kind of be inundated with meters for quite some time. That being said, when residents don't really need to contact the town when it comes to meters, I would say the only time they need to contact the town is if they feel that their water usage is out of whack with what they believe is what they used. That would be an appropriate time to contact us, like immediately once they recognize that, because we could either help to identify a potential leak in their home or an issue with that meter. But generally, once the meter dies, when we go out to read it the next month, we won't be able to pick up that read, and that's how we know it's dead, and we'll be able to pinpoint which ones they are. The residents don't really need to contact us when it comes to getting their meter read. We hope to get to a point where we're not just constantly trying to fix the broken meters, and that we can start to get into a more proactive approach. But 1,000 meters over 2 years is a very significant amount of resources that are required to do that. And between our environmental services team and our water billing team, they've done an excellent job of being able to pull it off. I'm extremely impressed with the amount of meters that we've done in the last 2 years. As it's basically taken up one whole technician out of my department for a couple of years. So it's a very large draw on resources. But yeah, I would say only if there's an issue, but otherwise we'll contact the resident. Our water billing team has a really good process in place now where once we don't get the read, they have a standard letter that goes out. We make meter appointments, and our technician will come and actually just change out the meter right at that appointment. So it's a pretty good process and happening pretty quickly.
And on that, one thing that this council and administration can be proud of is when we did bring water billing in-house, the level of standard increased at that point. So we were able to do proactive scanning for exactly what Director Gerard referenced. 0 reads, we knew something was wrong, or if it was high usage reads, we were able to also alert them. So it has been an increase in level of service from that perspective. Any other questions? Yeah, follow up, Councillor Meady.
Thanks, and through you, Chair. So then that just kind of hit on 2 other questions, was that, so I do know, like, at one time, before the water bills were brought in-house, I had a leaky toilet, and I got a phone call saying, hey, your bills, it looks like you're using a whole bunch of water this month. Is there something going on in your house? And I was able to go back. Are we still offering that service? And then the second thing, for the last 100 or so of the older meters, is there any way that we can notify the people that, hey, yours is an older meter, we're coming to get on it, just that they're aware and that they know that they could be expecting a visit pretty soon?
Director Gerard. So we are still monitoring for high usage. One thing that we've implemented as a council and administration is a policy for high usage relief. So we did not have that previously. It would have to come to finance committee and we'd have to evaluate it on a one-by-one basis. So now what happens is if they have high usage, we have a policy that we will rebate them part of their fee if it is for plumbing issues or structure issues. So that's a new program. So we are still actively monitoring and alerting. And then I'll pass over to Director Gerard for the follow.
Chair. So I mean, it would take a pretty significant amount of resources to notify everybody, and it's kind of all over the place, right? So it's not one specific neighborhood that would have older meters. It would kind of be all over the place. What I can say is like 1,000 meters is about 1/8 of our entire system. So we've replaced a significant amount. But needless to say, we will get to those meters when they do stop working. So there's, like I said, there's a good system in place. If a resident does have concerns, they can always snap a picture and send it our way or call us and ask. But generally, if a meter is not working properly, they're getting billed less. So use their own discretion.
And I too myself, I got a lot of inquiries and comments about this, especially when we took it in-house, because we did change over a lot of water meters and people had higher bills. So I went right to the water department. Director Gerard met me there. We looked at a water meter and they showed me how it would work. And the occasion that a water meter would overread is like basically nil, like never. It would always underread. As they get older, they slow down, so they measure less. So when people get a new meter, it measures accurately because it can actually flow. So that's something that I learned. I did post a picture on my Facebook because I found it quite fascinating. So, and then last week, I actually had a resident reach out because they had high bills. One person living in a house, close to $300 bills. Turns out they had a leaky toilet, and that's what caused their bill to be that high. It caused the bill to be substantially higher. So they had somebody fix it. They are calling town hall using the policy because it's now fixed. So leaks can actually cause, like, you wouldn't think a leaky toilet could double your bill, but it actually does. So then another local municipality, I saw that they did something. They went door to door. It was a little bit controversial and they got something set up. There was a different type of meter than what we have. Is it Kingsville? I don't know if anybody can speak to that because this is our other option. Like we have option like the mid-range options. It's good, but there's one better, but it comes with like a huge price tag.
I think they're referring to the AMI system if I'm.
I think it's AMI is maybe part of the conversation, but there are different styles of water meters. I would say that the style of water meter that we use is like a mid-range, but it'd be significantly more expensive to go from what we use to the next style. That being said, the reason that they say the meter would be better, the style that Kingsville use, is because if you're setting yourself up to go to an AMI system where you are constantly monitoring water usage, then those meters are better because they have an antenna that actually goes out of the building. So when you install the water meter, there's a wire that comes out of the meter and there's an antenna that goes on the side of your house. So it makes it a little bit better for reading those water meters when you're using an AMI system, because AMI system an antenna. So you have an antenna and it's constantly reading water meters. So interval 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half hour. So if you have that style of meter, then you can put less base stations up, and the base stations are like $60,000. So that's why we're seeing a lot of communities who had, the vision of going to an AMI system aren't using AMI across their entire municipalities. They're only using it in large urban centers, and their rural customers don't get to see that benefit. So yeah, there's definitely a variety of different meters. We're definitely mid-range, but significantly more expensive and a little bit more costly to replace those meters and to buy them, which is another thing that people tend to complain about when we issue our water meters, that they have to pay for the initial purchase.
Questions from members of council? Okay, if not, we'll move on to our last topic of the evening. And that is, again, Councillor Mady. And if you could go over a brief description of the golf cart pilot program brought forward.
You and through you, Chair. Yeah, this is, so like in Ontario, there's been a few municipalities around us, that have, written letters and got into this pilot program. And I wanted to see the appetite of us if we were looking to maybe, write a letter and ask if we can get into this pilot program. Specifically in the hamlet of Colchester, but maybe all along that lakefront. I think as we've been going through a lot of these public consultation meetings, and the residents out there have been saying pretty loudly and clearly that they kind of like the idea of a retirement community. And I can't think of a better thing than a retirement community than being able to take your golf cart to your store, to the laundromat, to the convenience, post office, wherever you got to go, rather than starting up a big car and driving through those small streets, small neighborhoods. So I think some of those areas might be a really good spot to try out a golf cart pilot program, and maybe even start seeing about some different ways of getting people to our beach and back without cluttering up that area and saving us some money there. So that's where this one came from. And I'm glad it's the last one because it's probably my favorite one to talk about tonight.
Glow for some background.
Thank you. So through the chair, my manager of licensing and enforcement and I did some research on this. What we found out is that the pilot project started in 2021. And what the government did is they created a regulation under the Highway Traffic Act. And what the regulation allowed is it allowed residents and visitors to use golf carts on roads with a speed limit of up to 50 kilometers per hour, but they restricted it to 5 different municipalities. So Pelee Island, Huron, Kinloss, Lakeshore, specifically within the Lighthouse Cove community, Amherstburg, specifically within Bois Blanc Island, and Chatham, Kent, specifically within the village of Erio. And the way that it works is it's going to run for 10 years. So it's going to stop on June 3rd, 2031. At that time, they're going to use the information that they've collected from those municipalities to determine whether or not they want to open it up to the municipalities. So from my understanding, we missed the boat on being able to be allowed into the pilot program. But in 2031, if they do wish to open it up, chances are we could be one of the municipalities that asked them to open it up to our municipality. What they required from the municipalities was that the municipality agreed to the pilot program and create a bylaw that restricts the way that they call them golf cars. The golf cars are used in those municipalities. They can only be operated between April 1 and November 30th of each year. And then again, the government's going to determine next steps, such as expanding or rescinding the program on June 3rd, 2031, or sometime after that.
Councillor Hammond.
And I can confidently tell you right now that it has taken Pelee Island 25 years to get that license.
Dudley?
I like the idea of it. I think it would be great if we were able to get in the program. I think we already had a discussion at one of our committee of the whole where we discussed four-wheelers and side-by-sides, which is a very easy one to do, I think. And we just never got it. We never had anybody come forward. I really wish we would. I know that they're being used throughout our community. I see them all the time. Same as the golf carts. They're being used on the beaches. I just think it would be a nice way to clean things up if we were to allow it. So I would definitely be behind it when we were able to get into any type of pilot program for that and the other one as well.
Through the chair. So am I to understand that in 2031, when this pilot program expires, that at that point we can discuss whether or not we can get into it? Is there another way we can, can we make it happen on our own through our own municipality?
Through the chair, I'm not prepared to answer whether or not we can make it happen on our own through our own municipality. I don't think we can. I think that's the whole point of the pilot program, because I think there are provincial rules that would regulate this sort of activity. And yes, the whole plan was that this pilot program would give them the information that they needed to determine whether or not can allow something like this. So they've restricted it to the 5 municipalities, and then they're going to come back in 2031 to determine whether or not they can expand this program and allow for other municipalities to try this.
Yeah, this is a question that surfaces, whether it's golf carts or ATVs. It does surface. I have some old reports more towards ATVs in my emails, but I think the one challenge will be the county, any county road. From before, we've been told that the county is not open to it. Lighthouse Cove, I think, is a bit of an anomaly. It's up there, it's isolated. I'm not even sure if one of the roads that is the county road up in Lighthouse Cove is one of the roads that they want to give back to Lakeshore at some point. That could be the case, but I think we're going to have a real challenge. The fact that County Road 50 cuts Colchester in half. You might be able to go this way, but maybe not this way.
Chair. So I had just was talking with one of the counselors in Amherstburg, and they had just finalized theirs this year. So that's why I was wondering if there's still some room to get in, and maybe you're just writing a letter to the province and asking them if we can still get into it. If that's something that we can do. I know I can't get direction right now, but I was just wondering if it's even worth going down that road.
Through the chair, I can do some further research. I can see if we could do that, and then I can come back to council. Or I can flag you to bring in a notice of motion to come back to council to write that letter. Let me do that research for you.
Any other questions from members of council? Okay, if not, then I will ask for a mover on item 6.5, being that the presiding officer of the committee of the whole now rise and report to council as to any recommendations, of which there are none, to council that were duly passed by resolution at the committee of the whole. Can I get a mover? Deputy Mayor Shepley and a seconder. Councillor Mady, any questions? Okay, all in favor? And that carries.
Director Malandrucolo to report out of our committee of the whole.
Andy, through you, I can report that there are no specific recommendations to council at this time.
Okay, thank you. At this point, I will just, the council receive, no, I don't, do I have to do that? Okay, looking for a mover that the council receive the report of the presiding officer of the committee of the whole and that council adopt the noted recommendations, which were none. Councilor McGuire Blaze, Deputy Mayor Shepley, any questions, comments? So administration will work with members of council on individual files if they would need to create a notice of motion. Okay, all in favor? That's carried. Needing a motion to adjourn now. Councilor Mady, Councilor Guerin, all in favor? That's carried. Have a good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us.